Well, hello, good afternoon. Everybody get their ice cream, got their sugar and their energy ready for this talk, right? I know you're going to be so excited. So I think today has been just a great day with all the talks, and it's been great to see everyone. Lots of friends that I haven't seen in a while, but here in person, so that's been great. So I am Dr. Elizabeth Stegemoller. I am associate professor at Iowa State University and director of the graduate neuroscience program. And I've been there since 2013, and I'm here today to tell you that we do research on Parkinson's disease there, and have been for quite a while, but want to give you a little bit of an update. So maybe for some people, you already knew we were there doing some fun stuff. For others, hopefully this will maybe get you excited to be involved in some of our research. So today in particular, we're going to talk about, first, I'll highlight a couple of our most recent undergraduate student research studies that we've done. And then I'll talk about our graduate student research studies, a couple of them, and one that we're recruiting for right now. And then I'll talk to you about two of our funded studies that we are also recruiting for. Our first one is a SPARKS-3 study, and that is a study on exercise. And then our final topic will be on singing, which is my main line of research. And so I'll give you kind of an overview of what we've done and what we know so far, and a little bit of information about the current study that we're doing right now. So that's what I hope to get done in 45 minutes. So hold on tight. Here we go, right? So first, I wanted to start with highlighting our undergrads, because what I do in my lab, I could not do without all of the undergrads that participate in our study. So we are in the lab. So in general, I have anywhere from 25 to 30 undergraduate students every year in my lab. And currently, we have 5 student-driven research projects. This means that the students design and collect and analyze and eventually present, some even publish their results from their studies. And the thing that motivates, I think, the students in the lab the most is actually the interaction that they have with our Parkinson's community. And so this next video kind of highlights what some of those are.
I'm Stegemoller, and I have established and helped to run our outreach programs for people with Parkinson's disease here at Iowa State University. So we offer 4 different groups. We have dance and music and exercise group, we have a singing group, we have boxing and yoga. So briefly, for our dance and exercise group, we know that people with Parkinson's disease move better with cues than when they try to move on their own. So part of our music, exercise, and dance class is to help cue movement with different musical cues. We also do ballroom dancing, where the partners are they're partnered up with a student. So we have a person with Parkinson's disease and a student, and they dance together. And the ballroom dance works on different needs, such as moving backwards and turning and balance and movement sequencing, all of these things that people with Parkinson's disease may have difficulty with. For the singing group, we meet, and the focus of that group is to work on the voice, respiratory control, and swallow. Our group focuses a lot on vocal exercises to help improve breath control and help improve the quality of the voice, and also work those muscles that you use for swallowing. And then we also do group singing as part of that. Our third group is the boxing group, and for this one, again, the students and the participants are highly interactive. Boxing is good in terms of having to move big and forceful, which is another quality that people with Parkinson's disease need to work on. It also works on balance and footwork and movement sequencing. There are 12 hits in boxing, and to have to remember different combinations in which movement you do is pretty challenging. So it's challenging cognitively as well as physically. And then finally, we have yoga. Again, this is another great class. It works on different sets of needs for people with Parkinson's disease. For example, getting down on the floor, getting back up on the floor, stress relief. We know if people are stressed with Parkinson's disease, their motor symptoms are worse. So yoga is good for stress relief, good for working on flexibility and balance. Hands down, my favorite part of the groups is watching the relationships and the interactions between people with Parkinson's disease and our student volunteers. They grow close. Some people develop relationships over 4 years, so hands down those relationships are pretty unique, and I think it is that interaction between the student and our participants that make the group what the groups are.
All right, so now you can see that we do quite a bit with our outreach, right? And I'll tell you a little bit more about our outreach programs as we get towards the end. But I just wanted to share that video at the beginning just so you can see kind of what motivates the work that's done in the lab, not only for me, myself, and seeing the wonderful relationships that emerge, but also for our students that are in the lab. So they have a screen for me to follow in the back, and I cannot see that far, so I'm trying to follow it on my computer, and my computer shut down. Okay, all right, so there are 5 student-driven projects, and most of these are centered around those outreach groups. So the students, saw or felt the worth in those groups and wanted to do a little bit of research around those. So we have a study on complex gait and walking and singing that we're doing, where we are looking for having people with Parkinson's disease not just walk straight, but walk in like a serpentine and sing while they do that. We have a project on our outreach and health, so looking at what happens over 6 months of involvement in our outreach groups on a lot of different both cognitive and health outcome measures. We look at music experience and cognition, the UPDRS and yoga, so looking at our yoga group and how does our motor symptoms improve after yoga. And then another project doesn't have anything to do with Parkinson's disease, but it's a fun one, where we're looking at cognitive fatigue in elite athletes. And so I'm going to highlight a couple studies today, the music experience and cognition study and our UPDRS and yoga study, just to take a look at what we have done there with our undergrads. So for the music training, the title was the effects of music training on fluid reasoning and cognitive inhibition in older adults with Parkinson's disease. So the primary question that the students were asking were, do people with Parkinson's disease who have had previous music experience of some kind, do they tend to perform better on tests of cognitive inhibition or and even fluid reasoning? So are they cognitively doing better? Because we know from other research that previous music experience tends to have a protective effect on cognitive function later in life. And so we wanted to know if the same thing held true for people with Parkinson's disease. And so to date, this group of students were able to collect data from 9 male participants with Parkinson's disease and 4 female participants with Parkinson's disease. That's our age range between 62 and 82. And the music experience ranged from anywhere from 4 years to 65 years of various music experience. And so they would meet with them online on Zoom. So this was done during the pandemic when we couldn't do in-person research anymore. And they would meet with them online and give them a questionnaire about their music experience and collect that data, and then have them do a couple of tests online. And so this first one is what we call the Stroop test. And so what you can see up there, this first one, there's just blocks of color. And so if I were to say, go down that column and name those colors, you would be like blue, blue, green, yellow, blue, blue, red, right? Pretty quickly. And then in the middle column, the letters are the same color as the actual word. So blue is written in blue, yellow is written in yellow. And so again, you would be asked to say those words as fast as you can. And then what you can see is in the third one, our incongruent trial, you're asked to name the color of the word, not the actual word. So the first one, even though it says green, is written in yellow letters. And so you would have to inhibit. Don't say green, we want you to say yellow, right? And so we would, and we can measure how long that takes and how many errors are made and determine a measure of inhibition. And then the second test is what we call fluid reasoning, which means can you take something and manipulate it a little bit? So they were given a shape, this kind of looks like a bee, and they say, okay, well, if you rotate it, which one of these would be the same shape if you just rotate it? You couldn't flip it in any direction. It only had to rotate in a circle. And so that would be fluid reasoning. And so those were the 2 cognitive tests that they did. And then we looked at a little bit of data. So for their data on your bottom are your cognitive scores, right? And then on the y-axis going up is the amount of music experience. And basically the take-home is that we didn't really find any relationship between the amount of music experience and cognitive performance. However, if you can see on at least the card rotation task, it does seem to be like there might be a group effect rather than like a linear where there's points along that line. It looks like there's clumps, right? There's a clump on one end and a clump on the other end, which is interesting. So maybe there's a certain amount of music experience that is protective against cognitive performance. But we did find a relationship between the 2 cognitive tasks. So those that did better on cognitive inhibition also did better on the fluid reasoning. And again, that ended up being kind of in clumps. So it seems like there's a group that does really well and a group that does not do as well. And so we're currently looking at some of the factors that might go into that. Maybe it's really about processing speed, like how fast can you do those tasks, rather than errors in actual cognition. So, that's pretty impressive for a group of undergrads, don't you think? Yeah, I was pretty impressed too. So they're continuing to collect. So if you're interested in this study, there'll be a chance to get my information, and you can definitely reach out to me. Of course, all of my undergrads are away for the summer, or most of them are. So we would be starting this back up in the fall if you're interested. So the second study I wanted to highlight by the undergrads in the lab is our study that looked at the effect of virtual group therapeutic yoga in Parkinson's disease. So when COVID hit, all of those lovely groups that you saw the video about, we had to quickly rearrange and we moved everything online. So we wanted to know, well, hey, is this effective or not if we move things online? Because for yoga in particular, we ended up getting more people participate online than we did in person. Personally, I think it's because nobody wants to see somebody else doing downward dog. I don't know. Because that's just something that's... So we flipped to being online, and again, this study was also done all online by the group of undergrads. And so they currently had, they finished up data collection with 5 participants that completed the yoga. And what they do is the APDA, which is the thing where you do like your finger tapping, your hand open and close. You might have done it in the clinic before. It looks at all of your motor symptoms, including tremor, your walking ability, and things like that. And so they would do that before, and then the participant would participate in our yoga online, and then they would complete the APDA after again. And when they would complete it after, it'd be right after the yoga finished. Then they did 30 minutes after and 1 hour after the yoga class finished. And basically what we saw is an improvement in our motor symptoms. After an online session for 1 hour, we saw, you can see that it goes from pre-session, which is the highest bar, so the larger the score, the worse the motor symptoms were, and then right after, and right after is the second bar, 30 minutes and an hour later, you can see that we have a significant drop in motor symptoms. The severity of motor symptoms, which we think is pretty cool. So we get about a 3 to 4 point drop, which is about the same as a clinical meaningful difference when you take meds. Now, all of these people were on medication, and so this is on top of the improvement that you would get with medication. So again, I thought, these undergrads are pretty impressive. Yeah, so this sets the stage for some pilot data that we have to hopefully move forward with some other studies, likely driven by some of our graduate students, which are next up. So I'm just going to kind of go through these, and I'm not going to give you the results yet because they're not done. They're still in my lab. But the first one I really wanted to highlight today is Cassandra's study. She is out at our booth, and she is recruiting participants for this study, and her particular interests are looking at the effects of medication on inflammation. And so, again, Cassandra is in her maybe 6th year of her PhD. She got shut down because of COVID as well. So she was on hold, and so now she's trying to finish it up, her PhD in neuroscience. And so this is a one-time study visit to the lab at Ames at the Iowa State campus. And basically what she's looking at is when you take your Parkinson's medication, what kind of effect does it have on inflammation? And how does that relate to your motor symptoms, right? And because we don't always know how medication is working for us, and we want to make sure that it's working well, and we also want to make sure there aren't any side effects that maybe we don't visually see, like the dyskinesias, but that might be there that could potentially lead to other diseases or disabilities if you have higher levels of inflammation. And so that's what her study is about. So if you are interested in that study, we definitely have a sign-up sheet, and I don't know, could I say it again maybe just for further recruitment? We have a sign-up sheet, and you can give her your name and number. I tease her, I tell her I'm not going to recruit for her because I don't want her to graduate, but yeah. And her email is also right there. If you don't want to sign up with us, you can write her email down and definitely shoot her an email. She will get back to you rather quickly. So, but I do have other grad students in the lab. So By the end of this, you're going to be like, how is she still standing? And I ask myself that question every day. 25 to 30 undergrads, and I have currently 8 graduate students in the lab. So our next one, just a little bit about what they're going to be doing. So Brandon Broxius just finished his master's degree and stayed in the lab to do his PhD in kinesiology. And he is who leads our boxing class because he's an actor, he's trained in actor combatant training, which means he teaches people how to hit other people on stage. And he also teaches people how to use knives on stage. So sometimes in our boxing class, we also get a couple knife skills out. So it's a lot of fun. But it's all acting, so we don't really hit any. Well, we do hit the undergrads sometimes, but they have mitts. They're okay. So he teaches the boxing class for us, and we'll be starting that back up in the fall. And so he is interested in how actor combatant training affects health. Jessie Brown is a newer graduate student. I mean, it seems like she's new, but COVID, we're like, they were here, but I didn't see them as much. Jessie will be starting her dissertation study soon. She was just approved by IRB, and she's looking at the effects of singing on respiratory control and cough. So I'll talk a little bit about our results from our singing studies, our previous singing studies, and so Jessie is a speech-language pathologist and music therapist, and she came to ISU to study with me, and she's extending kind of a line of her research in the singing to specifically look at respiratory control and cough. Aaron Nakama is a PhD candidate in neuroscience, and he's interested in curiosity. And I'm very curious to see where that's going to go. That's all I know right now. Crystal Jewell is a PhD candidate in neuroscience, and she's interested in mindfulness. Both Crystal and Jessie lead our online yoga class. And so they're really interested in mindfulness and yoga and how that affects health. Andrea Tauntus is a PhD candidate in HDFS, is Human Development and Family Studies, that's what it is. And she's still determining what she wants to do, but she's kind of interested in the gut microbiome or even the microbiome in the oral cavity and what that can tell us about Parkinson's disease. So we'll see where she ends up. And then I have 2 new master's students. Then again, both of these are collegiate athletes, so Kaylee Logue and Maddie Brandt. Kaylee is a cross-country runner, and Maddie is a soccer player for ISU. And so they're both interested in some neuroscience and cognitive fatigue and things like that in elite athletes. So maybe not Parkinson's disease, but still pretty cool to take a look at. So those are all the studies, the ones that are currently kind of going as Cassandra's, and our undergrad studies, when they come back in the fall, they'll pick back up, and then theoretically all of these grad students will get rolling with their studies too. So I'll try to keep standing. We'll keep going, but we do a lot of research just from a student level, which is really exciting because a lot of times it's those new ideas that come from the students that really drive that next step in what we're going to do for research for people with Parkinson's disease. So I'm going to kind of switch gears a little bit now and talk about some studies that we're doing that are actually, that I guess would be considered my studies, or that we're participating in. So this first one is the SPARKS-3 study. So the study in Parkinson's disease of exercise. It is a phase 3 clinical trial, and it is supported by NIH. So what does that mean? So in research, like your drugs have to go through certain phases until they're actually on the market to be able and FDA approved. And so phase 3 is like, the end, one of the end stages of proving that a drug works. And so this study is basically a randomized study of endurance treadmill exercise and changes in the signs and symptoms of Parkinson's disease. It's a multi-site study. So the PI on the study is from Northwestern University in Chicago, Dr. Daniel Korkos, and Iowa State University is a site for that study. So there's 29 sites across the US and Canada. And if you just heard Dr. J. Albert's talk, Cleveland Clinic is also a site for this study. So we're competing. No, not really. And so with this, the goal of this study is to test whether the progression and signs of Parkinson's disease is decreased in people who have not started medication yet. When they perform endurance treadmill training, so when they start their exercise. So the goal is to enroll 370, get that, 370 people diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, so newly diagnosed, that have not yet started medication. There's an age range there, and they'll either be assigned to moderate intensity for exercise or a high intensity for exercise. And so we are really seeking individuals to participate in this study. So if you are between the ages of 40 and 80, and you have been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in the last 3 years, and you have not started taking levodopa, Parkinson's medication, and you're not planning to start taking medication in the next 6 months. And then the last one is that you're currently not participating too much, is what we say, in a structured exercise program. So you could be participating in a program, but if it doesn't meet what our particular guidelines are, you could still participate. So it's a very select kind of group, but it's there to say, hey, you get diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, maybe we can show that let's start exercise before we start medication and see how long we can delay before we start taking medication. And this is the first phase 3 study to actually look at exercise in this way. So it's pretty cool, I think. I mean, I can say it because I'm just a site, I'm not the PI, but I think it's really cool to be a part of this groundbreaking research. So I think some of the questions with that one then, if you're like, hey, that might be cool, or you might know somebody, what does this mean? Because this seems like you could be very much involved. And it kind of is, but there's quite a bit to it, but in the long run, it's pretty exciting too. So the first part is there's a telephone call. We would call and make sure you meet those criteria, and then there's some screening visits to make sure you then continue to meet the criteria. But one of the main parts of the screening criteria is a DAT scan. So many of you may have heard of the DAT scan by now, which is an imaging tool of the brain that can kind of help confirm whether or not you have a dopaminergic depletion that would be suggestive of Parkinson's disease. However, this scan is not readily covered by insurance. And so while it would be great to be able to get the scan, a lot of times it costs people up to $5,000 out of pocket. So for this study, the DAT scan is paid for because it's part of the clinical trial. So again, if you have a friend or you yourself are newly diagnosed and you're like, this is a great way to get some confirmation on that and still be part of a cool study. After you go through all those screening procedures, then there are several assessments throughout the year where we look at things of your physical and memory thinking assessments, questionnaires, we do blood draws, exercise tests, and then there's another DAT scan at the end of the year. And basically you'll be asked to exercise on a treadmill 4 times a week for approximately 30 minutes. And if you're like, I can't go to Ames 4 times a week, right? That's crazy, right? I would never ask you to do that. But we also provide either gym membership in your local area, or we can also provide, we can purchase a treadmill for you to have in your home so that you could exercise 4 days a week. So, I mean, there's some perks with it. But it is also a commitment. But if you're interested in it, Jessie, who I talked about earlier, our grad student, her email is up there. And you can reach out to her, or you can sign up. We'll have sign-up sheets here at the end if you're interested. It doesn't mean that you're committed. Anytime you put your name and number down, doesn't mean you commit to anything. It just means, hey, you're interested, and we'll give you a call to talk more about the studies. So you could do that here or at our booth when I'm done, if you're interested. And we also have a flyer at the booth if you want to take that to a friend. All right, so now the bread and butter of what I do at ISU for me, which is singing. I am a music therapist by trade, so that's what I did my undergrad in, and then I saw all these wonderful things that would happen with music to help other people, and I decided, why does that happen? And so I thought, it must be about the brain. And so I went back to school and did my PhD in neuroscience. And when I finally got to ISU, I could kind of do the research that I've always wanted to do. And it turns out that I would say I'm doing the research that I always wanted to do, but I didn't know that this was the research that I always wanted to do. So I started with my very first singing group back in 2013, and basically have been going ever since. I didn't think that I would continue with singing at that time, but I have to say the Parkinson's community kind of didn't let me stop. So I continued going, and I love it. So I can't really say much more other than that. So you might be saying, well, why are you even interested in singing in Parkinson's disease? Why does it matter? And so we know that there are non-motor symptoms that affect the quality of life, right? And these non-motor symptoms, like depression, they kind of consider difficulty with breathing and swallowing non-motor symptoms. And these are factors that can actually lead to death in Parkinson's disease. So indeed, complications from swallowing can lead to aspiration pneumonia, which is one of the leading causes of death. But our current treatments, like our medication and our surgical treatments, don't always help these symptoms. And so working within the PD community, I feel that there is still a strong need to find alternative treatments that have this pervasive effect on hopefully all symptoms of Parkinson's disease, both motor and non-motor, including some of our depression and apathy that may occur. And I believe the answer to that is singing and music. So in our original singing study way back in 2013, we did a 8-week program, and then we did our original study in person, and then we did a follow-up study where we did the same thing, same exact protocol that I'm going to show you virtually. We had 30 participants from across Iowa, in 4 different singing groups. And all of our interventions were led by music therapists. And these interventions included vocal exercises and group singing. So I'm going to show you an example of our group singing. So that particular song, you might think, oh, I know that song. Maybe you don't, but it wasn't just singing for singing's sake. Maresy dotes and dozy dotes and little lambsy divey, a lot of articulation, right? And the vocal range was over a wide range to work on pitch range. We also, you might have noticed, there aren't any lyrics in front of them, so there's working memory, sitting up straight, good posture, a facial expression, and then of course we also work on lifting the palate, which uses the same muscles that you use to swallow. And the palate is like, if I say it now, everybody's going to do it, but if you yawn, okay, go ahead, you can. And you can feel it. It's okay because it's like almost 3. We completed 8 weeks of that, and before and after the 8 weeks, we measured some voice outcome measures, respiratory control, how forcefully you can breathe in and out. We measured swallow, so the white device was what we used to measure breathing, and those little black devices up there, we put them on the muscles and measured muscle activity while people swallowed. And then we did quality of life. So I'm just going to kind of sum up our past results from the original study. Basically, we had significant improvements in respiratory control, so people could breathe better in and out, which is great. And significant improvements in muscle activity associated with swallow. So in this particular graph, the top graph is like muscle activity before, and the bottom graph is muscle activity after. And so you can see the muscles are turned on for a longer period of time, which is a good thing for swallow because you want to hold up that larynx and keep the airway closed the entire time you're swallowing. And if something were to seep down into the lungs, we want to be able to cough that out. Now, we didn't measure cough, which is why Jessie is doing her study, but we did measure respiratory control, which says that it improved, which means hopefully if some foreign material did seep down, we would be able to expel that to prevent complications from swallow, such as aspiration pneumonia. We also showed significant improvements in quality of life, so people felt better emotionally. There were improvements in our voice measures, but not all of them reached significance. But still, any improvement is a great improvement for Parkinson's disease, whether or not it reached significance or not. And then we saw similar results for our virtual singing. So that was pretty impressive, and this was before COVID hit. So I was like, okay. And participants felt less stress and felt that they could move better after singing. So that was kind of the original. And from that data, I was able to apply for another grant and received a grant from the Grammy Foundation. So I did get a Grammy. That's right. So this grant was to measure motor symptoms, stress, and inflammation after an acute session of singing. So remember, the participants in our singing group said, hey, I feel better and I can move better. I don't feel as stressed. That's what they told us on our interviews after the study. So we said, well, let's put some data behind that. And so we had 17 participants complete 1 hour of singing, and 8 participants completed 1 hour of reading, right? And we obtained cortisol. We had them spit in a tube, and we did a blood draw to get some blood for our inflammation markers. And then we had neurologists that were masked to the study. They live in Florida, and they scored our clinical, that whole, finger tapping, all of that again for us, that we did right before and after our singing group. And so these results, basically, we revealed that singing was not stressful. So all of you who say you can't sing in a group, and you're worried about that, you shouldn't be. Right there, it's not stressful. We didn't say, that's all we can really say, because we didn't reach significance, but if you look at the data, the darker line is our singing group, and you can see that cortisol, which is a measure of stress, was reduced compared to our group that did the reading after singing. So I don't want to hear it. When I go to recruit people for singing study, you can't tell me. I'll be like, hey, I already got the data, I just put it up there for you, right? All right. And what's also interesting is that we saw significant improvements in motor symptoms after singing. So again, the black is our singing group and the gray is the control group. And so our overall score didn't hit significance, but when we broke up our score by domains, such as tremor, and just looked at gait and posture, we saw significance. And my brain still is like, how in the heck could you sit for an hour and sing and see an improvement in tremor? Anybody want to explain that one to me? Yeah, no, that's why we're still going, right? And then we also see improvements in gait and balance, significant improvements. So we were pretty excited to see some of this and excited that this is just going to move us forward. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to show you a video of a participant. On one side is pre and then post. I think it should go. Yeah. So, a little bit of, we're going to start with bradykinesia, which is this repetitive movement. So you can see how much smaller. It's not greatly improved, but it is better after singing. And there's our hand open, hand close. Remind you, she's on meds. So it's not like she's off meds, on meds. This is on meds. I'm sure you guys have done this before. And we'll watch for tremor. You'll notice, if you can see it, there's a tremor in the foot, but it might be hard to see on the screen. And in her hands, that's gone after singing. It's not there. The tremors in her foot there, it's not there anymore. A gait and posture. Standing up. Much quicker afterwards. And this is down and back. Much faster. A little bit more arm swing on one side. And my favorite pool test, which we don't like, completely fell afterwards, or before and not afterwards. So this participant scored a significant drop in motor symptoms by 12 points after singing. I'll say that again, 12 points. That's 3 times the amount you would get the clinical meaningful difference for taking meds. And she was on meds. So we find that pretty interesting. Here's our newest off-the-press results for inflammation, and I have no idea what they mean. So, we did the blood draw and we looked at our inflammation, and what we see is that we see significant changes in IL-1 beta and IL-8 cytokines. I work with a colleague on this, and I'm hoping that one day she will tell me what these mean, and we can move forward. But the fact that we're even seeing changes in our peripheral inflammation afterwards, what I can tell you is these changes are very similar to the changes you see after doing acute exercise, which I think is kind of cool. So, what happened during COVID then? So, yeah, we all got locked in our houses, right? So that's all that happened before COVID. And so then the question is now what are we going to do, right? COVID hit, and what could we do? So we switched all of our outreach groups to virtual delivery, and now we have hybrid delivery. So no excuse for not joining the singing group. You can join virtually. Just saying. And we did our virtual singing festival in 2020 with 170 members from across the PD community, and we had a special appearance on a webinar by Renee Fleming. That was in 2020. We took our extension series. If you haven't heard about it, you should stop by the booth. It's a great series, A Journey Through Parkinson's Disease, and it went viral. Really did. But we changed that 3-part educational series on Parkinson's disease and started delivering it virtually. And now we are back to in-person, but still offer a virtual delivery quarterly. Did I get that right, Sarah? Good, okay. And so this is a great program to also offer in your communities. And then since we couldn't go anywhere, we did interviews. And so we've completed 50 interviews from all those people that participated in that video that I'll show you in a minute, of the 170 groups in California, England, Australia, all of those groups. We called them and said, hey, why do you sing? And we asked them those questions. And we've completed those interviews and analysis, so hopefully we'll be getting that paper out soon. And then finally, I did work hard and submit another grant to the National Endowment for the Arts to study the long-term effects of singing. So those studies were 8 weeks or just one session, and so now we're looking at 16 weeks of singing. And we're currently recruiting for that study too. So I'm just saying, you can't tell me you can't sing. You can start participating. And you can't say, well, I'm just a caregiver. You can't say that either, because we need healthy older adults too. Although the healthy older adults don't have to sing, you just come to the lab. And so if you're interested in getting in on this singing research because you think it's super cool, like I do, my email is there and my phone number is there, and we'll also have a sign-up sheet up here in the front and at the booth. And so with that, I am going to leave you with this video to watch on your way out. And then after that, I will put up a slide that has all the contact information, and I'll be available up here up front for questions, because I think I have to end at 2:50. So, but I'll be right up here if you want to come up and ask questions. Yes, we have had groups meet before COVID. We had some groups in Des Moines. We had a group in Waverly, a group in Pella, and those have kind of all. The Waverly group still meets, but the group in Des Moines and Pella kind of, after COVID, kind of fell apart. So we are always open to helping start other singing groups, or you can attend virtually to my group on Zoom. You can email me, and I can give you all that information. Yep.
What do you know about the research study for individuals diagnosed with Parkinson via photo voice?
Yeah. That's one with my colleague, Photo Voice. So that's like with taking pictures and cameras and whatnot. That's a colleague of mine in HDFS as well. I don't know if she's gone further. I know she's done one data collection, but I don't know if she's gone further than that. So, yeah. But I can ask her. Yep. Yes, if you have DBS, most of them you can be involved, especially the singing study, for sure. Yes, most definitely. I'll take you. So here's that video I promised, and I'll be up front with any other questions or if you want to sign up for any of our studies.
What the world needs now is love. don't need